Trump, you guilty AF. Libs all celebrate. Your ass will serve 4 years in the White House. Libs concerned.
Now, I'm gonna be
6 points, Aiden. It's gonna happen.
I'm gonna say that I hate this. I hate this kind of like, and I get it, I do get it, but I also hate the kind of like weird celebratory nature of people being like, Trump got convicted of this and this makes us win. I'm like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Maybe, but I don't think it means what you think it means. And I guess I could explicate more about that later, as to why I don't think it means what you think it means.
Are you saying that this problem you're describing is one of the left or one of the right or both?
Yes.
Okay.
Both.
Fair enough. Okay, so if the concern is that people are making too quicker judgments and extrapolating too much what's going to happen from this, yes. This is for the meme, but I do have reasons to suspect that it will help him beyond just the fact that the first poll shows a big jump for him. But of course, this is meant to destroy him, so it might actually work to some extent, but it's not going to work exactly as easily as I think it is.
I don't think
they think it is.
As the conservatives are acting like this is their massive win because we got them to do the thing, and I've spoke about this in public and said I did think that it would be in Trump's benefit if they continue this political persecution, and it is in Trump's benefit. But is this a good thing overall? Absolutely not. Any of this precedence is horrid.
Yes.
Putting any of this on precedence is nightmarish. Nobody wins out of this longitudinally.
No, but we're at a period of time right now where the side that has power is using it illegitimately and is willing to sacrifice anything, including their own potential safety in the future, including the long-term survival of the nation. In fact, they're not just willing to sacrifice it, they're sabotaging deliberately. So they are going to do that. Yes, this is bad, but we have to look in that particular case, we have to look at the short-term benefit, because from that we can destroy them, get rid of them, and then solve the long-term problems after that, which is what I think Trump was doing in 2016. He just underestimated how bad his enemy was. So he focused on healing the nation, which in many ways he did. He solved a lot of long-term issues or put policies in place that would solve them, but underestimated how much of the enemy was still left. Yeah.
Had they not been immediately overturned by Joe Biden.
I think so, yeah.
Now, look, I don't want. I'm not trying. I am really trying to not be too black-pilled because I've been trying to be more white-pilled for the last couple of years. But I do not think that this is. People who are acting like that the fact that he got convicted on 38 charges is a win. I do not think is the win you think it is.
34,
because they're basically, or was it 40?
34. Sorry,
34. Right. 30. Yeah, 34, not 38. Is it? I don't think it is the when you think it is, nor do I think it's going to proc the psychological reactions that you're hoping for. If it would have procced it would have procced it when they charged him with it. And I'm not sure.
I'll explain why. Go on.
But that's it.
Okay.
On that point.
I think that there was reactance to the court cases, but because it was gradual, it was the crab in the pot boiling thing, or the frog in the pot boiling thing. So it was gradual enough that it didn't, as you say, proc the reactance. It didn't proc a large scale reaction, but it did improve his poll numbers. It did improve his donations. So it did in a way, not instantly, not a big aggressive reaction, but there were so many of those cases, and so some of them were so frivolous. Most of them were so frivolous that no one assumed, or no one had a reason to believe with good confidence that any would lead to corruption. Conviction. But one has now led to conviction, and so it's a new level of the culture war, a new ante that's been upped that our opponent has to go to, and they're running out of things that they can do that won't lead to their immediate downfall, and they have to go to this stage now, and so the reaction is good. The closer that the likely reaction gets to just toppling their legitimacy, the worse it is for them to use that weapon, but the less choice they have in using it because everything else has already been subsumed by the public's awareness and their lack of trust. So they have to go to this level now. They have to start arresting and trying to imprison their political opponents, but they don't have many extremes that they can left to go to.
What's stopping them from doing that? They arrested the president of the United States.
They haven't actually arrested him, but they've convicted him.
They did. They dragged him in. They had all those, like he did have to go into court.
Yes, they arrested him ages ago, but they've actually convicted him.
But I'm saying
he's out on bail.
Sure, but they've arrested the president of the United States. That all of this is telling a story, right, to the American people that whoever you are, if you go against us, we will come for you. We will destroy you. Now, I know that this is looking.
I don't think that's what they're receiving. But
I know that this is looking like it's a counterfactual to that claim I just made. That if you disagree with us, we will come and destroy you. Now, by the way, there's still how many people? I don't even know how many people still in jail, not even with trial after Jan 6, 4 goddamn years ago. Who are still rotting in jail over whatever that was.
Trump says he'll release them as soon as he gets into office as well.
I don't believe him.
Okay, I do, but fair enough.
He didn't.
I know. He didn't stop it before it happened or anything like that. The Julian Assange thing is complex. I can understand.
I know it is, but he at that point in time was capable of pardoning them. He didn't do that. While he was still in office for those last couple of hours, essentially, he didn't do that.
He's up against such an opponent. He's a man against a literal Leviathan. I think we can cut him some slack for not doing it perfectly without assuming that he's malicious.
He's malicious. I think and this is not his fault. I'm going to say the word incompetent, and I'm going to say the word incompetent to describe Trump, not because I don't think he's an intelligent and very savvy man. The reason why he's incompetent is because it's basically impossible to be competent when the Leviathan is against you. The entirety of this massive political force that controls everything from business to science to education to
doesn't control it completely. But 4 years of being in office, followed by 4 years of the opponent being in office after he was rigged out, have actually changed him. He's less incompetent in that sense now than he was. It is possible to comprehend the Leviathan. And this is the answer to your previous question. The public is becoming more aware of it. And the public, they don't directly knock over the Leviathan. You shouldn't think of it in terms of directness. It's too easy and too literal and too limited to think of it as a one cause to effect process, which I think a lot of people I've heard talking about this matter do. It's indirect. There's loads of different ways that the culture and the opinions of the people can indirectly affect power politics. And that is what's happening here. The reason that they can't just have the press say Trump is a bad man and then Trump stops being able to run, or the reason they can't just snap their fingers and say Trump is not allowed to run, is because it would destroy their perceived legitimacy, which this still does. And that's what I mean. It's so close to the wire. If they were to just come out and say democracy is cancelled, Joe Biden's president for life, it would destroy their perceived legitimacy, which is so close to what they're doing already. This is what I mean about them getting close. That's exactly it.
They don't say it, but they do it in action.
Perceived legitimacy. They need it. Otherwise, again, by 1,000 cuts, by 360 million cuts, they would lose power very quickly if they were not perceived as legitimate. And so they can't lose that, but they are trying to use as much. They're trying to use as little power as they can to achieve what they want, but nothing is working against Trump. So now they feel they have to convict him for a crime that he is obviously nonsense, because they have no other choice. But they're so close now to losing
a hooker to shut up, which is like, who cares?
Actually, it wasn't even that. It was the fact that he miscategorized it, or not even him. His bookkeeper miscategorized it, which at worst, even if he seems guilty, is a demeanor. Is a misdemeanor.
Yes,
we'll get into that in more detail later.
Right, sure. So it's everyone knows this is a farce. None of this has anything to do with actual criminal justice. Every single person on planet Earth knows that, but certainly every American who's paid any one iota of attention to this, but this is about the divide in the American people. People who want this to happen, they do not care about the legitimacy of it whatsoever. The people who, in terms of him being a criminal and going to jail, I think actually this is a boon for the left. The fact that their case was so weak, the fact that their case was so insane. But ask the average leftist what's happening here, and what do they think is happening? They think Donald Trump is getting off because he's a big rich white dude. That's why he's getting off, because he's too powerful.
Well,
they don't see this as political persecution. They don't see that as political persecution. No, they don't see this as political persecution.
Yeah.
This is an actual massive, and I said both sides are being R-worded on this, okay? The left is looking at this and going, oh my god, I can't believe Donald Trump got off. It's just because of his privilege or whatever. The right's looking at it and saying, well, Donald Trump's being persecuted, and this is, insane, and we have to, like, now we got to go out and protest. Now we got to go out and riot. Hey, like, thanks CIA, FBI man for going and poking them and saying, hey, conservatives, go do a protest. How did that go at Jan 6? Do you see, like, why this outcome in particular is beneficial to the elites, the establishment, by provoking animus and hatred on both sides of the aisle? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. Again, that's true. And it's something I thought about, the fact that we celebrate, for example, when Disney isn't doing very well because they're corrupt. But we should want Disney to be doing well. Disney was one of the greatest creative forces of the West's power. They've been massively culturally influential across the entire world. Pretty much every culture in the world has Disney movies. A lot of people, a large portion of the world, grew up with Disney movies. That's just one example. Star Wars as well. It's good stuff, or it was. We should want it to be successful. But because they're clearly they're trying to sabotage our nations, they're clearly on the wrong side of this conflict. We want them to be destroyed. Should we want elements of our great nations to be destroyed? Should we want them to die and cripple and fall away? Ideally, no. But the point is that every system needs deadheading. Every system needs filtration and melting down to the things that don't work. A caustic process. When you work out your muscles and the weakest cells die, and then the acid melts them away so that more can grow in their place. That's how muscle growth works, I think. It's the exact same idea. It's filtration. So they do need to die, and they will almost inevitably be replaced by something better. The power of capitalism, even with how cronyist it currently is. Hell, the cronies are the ones we want removed, the ones that are collapsing, the ones that are suffering. So I agree with you, Aidan, that it is causing chaos in the short term. It's causing animus and potential entrapment in the short term. But it is ultimately going to produce better results for us in the long term, because our opponent knows nothing but the short to maybe midterm. They can plan very deviously in that. Jan 6th was very devious. They got some of what they wanted there, but in the end, not everything. But the point is, the more they use these illegitimate tactics, every single time they use an illegitimate tactic that doesn't work, because now they have to go worse. They have to go one step worse, and everyone's aware of the fact that they're the bad guys.
And they've gone worse here.
They've stepped it up. Another up in the ante once again. Exactly. There's only so many times they can get away with that, and we're already seeing the results. We're already seeing the people actually having an effect and preventing them from exercising as much power as they'd like to. They are already afraid. They're so afraid of Trump getting into power that this is what they have to do. They have to resort to this.
I think they would love for Trump to be in power again.
I know you've said that.
I think they absolutely would love for Trump to be in power, because what has been, let's think about this part of it, Trump being in power, right? What has been the legitimizing factor for every single authoritarian piece of bullshit that the left has done in the United States, at least, and not just in the United States, but internationally for the last 8 years, has been Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, Trump. They have used him as a vector to justify every single authoritarian piece of shit that they've done. So of course they would love, that they just win. Their little break. They've already won.
No, they haven't. They have power, but they're losing it, and they will lose it all quite soon. The alternative is that they just win and keep the power, and nothing gets resolved, and it's a managed decline. What we're doing here is we're facing them on the battlefield. And yes, there is going to be bloodshed. In so doing, there is going to be chaos in the short term.
Yeah.
But we actually, therefore, have a chance of winning. And a conflict like this had to happen at some point. Otherwise, we were just going to go out with a whimper. But no, we are at least going out with a bang. And I don't think we're even going out.
And I'm not trying to be blackpilled. To be clear, what I think you should do is give up on mainstream politics, because it's completely and entirely taken over. Get involved in local politics, get involved with local communities, make friends with people who share your same values in your local community and online. That's what we need to do, because this stuff, it's all controlled. This is all gay ops. All of it is. This is all gay ops, in my opinion.
I think get involved in local politics, yes, but I don't think it's all gay ops. I think the level at which there is what's the word, pantomime level control is below the highest level. It's at the level of what a lot of the problematic institutions, the Democrats, most of academia, most of the press, all these, what those groups do at that level. Yes, pantomime, but they don't control everything. And it does seem to me, from not just hope, but from observation, MAGA does not appear to be mostly controlled. There may be elements of it there are, but Trump does not appear to be controlled. He does not seem like the kind of man who would be controllable, to be honest.
No, I don't think he can control him.
Yeah,
I agree.
And even if our opponent thinks that MAGA is benefiting them somehow, I think they're mistaken. I think they will end up regretting that decision, like they ended up regretting promoting Trump in 2015 to try and get rid of all the other Republican candidates who they thought were more serious than he is. They underestimated
what they're doing
him
right now. They're weirdly doing the same song and dance that they did back then, of thinking that that would work. Now, I don't know if it will be
on the highest
more or
level
less.
of politics.
Yes.
It's real. There's no mastermind controlling the whole thing. There's masterminds controlling parts of it, but there are genuinely two sides. Our opponent are genuinely terrified of Trump getting into power because, as I've said, he could put into place one policy to regularize elections in a few very simple and obvious ways, and the Democrats would not win an election for 10 to 20, maybe more years. Just with one policy, they couldn't even undo it because they couldn't rig it next time. If he just federally regularizes elections to make sure that they can't rig.
Why would
individual states could disobey?
Exactly. Well,
California,
not disobey.
New York,
that's their absolute right.
Pennsylvania,
to do so.
Washington.
It's states' rights.
Not if the federal government regularizes it, especially not if it's made an amendment.
As a conservative, that's absolutely. As a Republican, or whatever. I'm not a Republican or conservative, but whatever. Someone who leans to that.
There's a time and a place for the federal government. This, I think, is one of them.
As someone who leans to that side, that would. I don't think you could get a lot of people on my side to agree with it, because you see, I have an instantaneous reaction to that of saying, let's let the federal government mandate something. How to get me to jump off the ship immediately. I don't want the federal government to mandate goddamn anything.
It's needed in this case. All I'm talking about is 5 policies for elections. One
I don't think the feds can. I
think Trump is likely to try and do something about elections. I think this is all he would need to do to prevent the Democrats winning for 20 years, up to maybe. The first is no digital ballots, only paper ballots. The second one is no mail-in voting, except for those who truly need it because they're disabled. The third is same-day voting. The fourth is voting day is a national holiday. We manage
they're going to say I'm autistic.
The natural resting point for that is fine because it works here.
I suppose.
As far as I know, we don't have a problem with that here. But the natural resting point is fine. It's being pushed by people that are sabotaging.
We don't have a problem with that in the UK because of our choices are absolutely brain dead dipshits.
Well, maybe that's a factor. But either way, I listed 4 things. There was a 5th. I can't remember which ones I listed, but 5 simple policies. And no, but that's okay. And yes, I am generally against the federal government overruling states, but even in a confederate system, well, sort of. Even in a confederate system, you have the Constitution, which has things that all states have to follow. And in a federal system, there are policies that all states have to follow, implemented by the federal government. I'm sure that we could think of a lot of policies that are currently in place, the federal government enforce upon all states, which we wouldn't agree should be there. But there are also many that we would agree should be there. So having another one, just adding one more that is eminently sensible, is perfectly reasonable. Now, will California, Washington, New York, and a bunch of others just refuse to follow those rules? Yes. At which point they are on a clock until they are pursued properly for that. And the legal policies will ultimately come down in favor of the federal policies. And many states who were marginal and who maybe didn't have as rigorous a rigging process will not be able to do it anymore. And there'll be enough people watching, enough people who care about this, enough people who are totally aware of the rigging problem and now know that they have Trump and the federal government's support that actually do something about it. Rigging will become a minority matter after just a couple of elections. And Trump can achieve this by setting one policy which he could do on day one as an executive order. And yes, they're terrified of him getting in and doing that. Because again, if we had the mastermind theory where they were in control of everything in politics and Trump was their man, then he would get in and not do that at all or not do anything about that, and maybe they wouldn't care. But
I disagree completely, and I'll tell you why.
If you think he is real, And if you think he's bothered by the fact that the election was stolen from him, I doubt anything in his life has bothered him more, then they must be terrified of him getting in, because he will make sure that the Democrats and the rhinos don't have power for a long time.
I very seriously doubt that, and I'll tell you why the Democrats, and let's not talk about sideism because it's pointless. Most of these people, they are on the same side. They are the uniparty. This Democrat-Republican divide is pointless. Look, it helps if Trump gets into power because it gives them an excuse to enact just another 4 to 8 to 16 years, doesn't matter how long it lasts, more authoritarian policies, because look, the Nazi man got back in. Trump is useful for, I'm not talking about the Democrats or the Republicans, I'm talking about the uniparty. Trump
You're
is
still talking about short term, though. That is part of the conflict.
No, that's what you, no, I know that's the difference. Uzalu, I'm talking actually about like 20, 40 years down the line. That this stuff that's happening right now, it seems pertinent right now. It seems like, oh, Trump's going to win, then we're going to do something. No. The people who are our enemies, as you say, are thinking 20, 40 years in the future. And I know that it's easy to think that they're really stupid because a lot of them are really stupid, but they are planning for 20, 40 years in the future, planning for control over the American population. And I think that Trump being in power absolutely helps them no matter what. Because as I say, if Trump, so for the people who like Trump, he gets into power, they're going to be very happy. Then they're going to persecute him again. The people who hate Trump, they're going to use that as, or they're going to say like, oh, well, this is proof of X, Y, Z, and that Trump is evil, racist. This is going to increase their kind of perspective on things. I think they are going to let him into power only to use him as a lightning rod in order by which to say, well, this is what we have to engage in all of these authoritarian things that we want to do.
Yep. I understand
which they did last time, and they did it for the last 4 years.
The problem with what you're saying is that you're not comparing it to the alternatives. The scientific process here is alternative hypotheses, the falsifiability of it. Because if we did not present them
we have evidence for the one thing that actually happened, so I don't know why would I...
If we did not present them with a strong opposing force on our side, then they would not be opposed. However, if we present them with an opponent, they will do that to that opponent. Now, in such a case, we have a range of options. We could either present them with an opponent who's genuinely aggressive, emotional, hateful, fascistic, or we could present them with an opponent all the way down the gradient with someone who is libertarian-minded, fair, truthful, and a bit bombastic, perhaps.
Oh, that's perfect for them. That's perfect for them, though.
No, Aiden. If it's perfect for them, tell me what would be like what would be worse for them.
Let me explain why.
Move is the latter option, the one that makes them the most liars. Would they if they had any choice of who to have as an opponent, Trump would be their last choice.
Oh, no, let me tell you.
It's would be the last choice, or someone who's on their side, essentially. Like, they would want unipartyists. They would want shills and losers and idiots. But if we have to present an opponent, Trump is just about the last thing they'd want, because it's so difficult to find anything to actually, like, convincingly criticize about him. This is why the US is doing better than the UK right now in the cultural, because Trump is literally the best foot forward of this movement. Is the best thing we could have asked for in terms of an opponent to our opponents, to the establishment. If he was a fascist, you would be dead right. 100%, because that's exactly what they would like to drive a wedge in our societies. The fact that he's not, the fact that he's eminently reasonable, despite sometimes not looking like it, makes it so much more difficult for them. They're pushing so hard and spending so much money to try and make people think Trump is a fascist. And again, to your point earlier about what the left now believes, who cares what the left believes? Their narrative is wrong. There's always going to be two narratives, and theirs is constantly losing, except where money is involved to pump gigatons of shitty propaganda all over the place, which again is becoming less and less effective and more expensive every year. There was always going to be two sides, but their side is losing, and who cares what the over there think?
Well, I think that actually what you brought up is exactly the point, is that It is because Trump isn't an insane fascist. Because they are moving the goalpost and have moved it, I think, in many ways successfully to make it so that many people think that anyone who has any kind of divergent politics, and you can see that, I can see this in the data. I've seen it in the data that anyone who has divergent, well, you could specifically see it in the left. Holy shit! But that's not just about insane lefties, because it's not just insane lefties. It's in people who would previously have called themselves centrists.
Yeah.
To make it seem that someone who is like Donald Trump, who is reasonable, who is like a totally like electable guy. Yeah, he's bombastic, etc. But this is how we are now defining a fascist. This is how we're now defining a far right extremist. And it's not just Donald Trump. It's your neighbor. It's your friend. It's everyone. This is part of the tactic, right?
Yes,
of
but not everyone's on
sowing
board
division.
With it.
No, not
Less
everyone's
than
on
you
board
may
with it.
think.
But you gotta these psychological. I we'll call them psyops because that's what they are. It's psychological operations.
Yeah.
We know that the CIA has studied them. I have studied them, not out of like a weird CIA thing, but just because I have a background. Well, my background is in human communication, and specifically in my original focus before I did the video game study stuff was in persuasion research. They are following the persuasion research letter by letter in this. That this is how you create a false perception of other people. It's how you create division. It's how you sow.
It's very
what have they done? What are they? It is very clinical. What have they done? You see all these articles that come out every year in the United States of, well, here's why I won't go see my family on Thanksgiving and Christmas anymore, because I perceive them this way. Them allowing Donald Trump back into this. And I think they are allowing him to. They're gonna persecute him so that they want people to do a terrorism. That's why.
Yes.
They want. You know that?
No, that's true. If the response to this is not small but also not total, then yeah, they will benefit from that, just like Jan 6th. But at that point, it could kick off a conflict which Tim Pool might rightly describe as a civil war. And again, I don't think that's the right resolution to the culture war.
No.
But if that happens, I don't think our side would lose.
Oh no! I used to think things like that, but the reality is that, and this is gonna look. I know that I'm dropping. I know that what I'm saying all sounds like black pills, but I am not actually being black pill because there are things that we can do. Like I said, it's about local community building, and not about this broader level stuff because the broader level stuff's fucked. But if you that broader level kind of action. Yeah, they're gonna arrest you. They want you to go out and do terrorisms. They want you to. It's explicitly what they want. That's what this whole thing. That's why they've given them all these counts, 34 counts. They want the right to go do terrorisms, and they want the left to think that they've won. That look,
again,
you were right the whole time.
That's something they're hoping to get out of it in the short term. It's beneficial to them short term potentially, because either they can put Trump in prison, which we'll talk about that later. I don't think that's going to be.
Is that happening?
Probably not going to happen, but it's not going to be that beneficial to them even if they do. But also they might induce a terrorism. You're right. They are going to get potential benefits out of that, which is why they did it. But long term, they've now upped the ante. They can hardly do anything less than this. And everything they do now is going to be even more suspicious to everyone in the population. The people on the left who are lauding the establishment can hardly more and more of them are finding it difficult to deny the illegitimacy of these actions being performed, even if they don't like Trump.
So
it is having that effect.
I think one of the fundamental issues here,
the clinicism with which they're approaching this is you're right, and they are following those policies, and lots of people are believing them, particularly in the cities, which is where most of these lab studies will be done. But humans are not just clinical creatures. They're not just rational. They don't follow these policies to the letter. There's infinite factors, practically, that change the way they behave in small ways. And yes, you can account for those theoretically, but you can't account for them in practice every time reliably. Especially, again, as we discussed last time, where people's behaviors change according to the pressures you put on the system. And so the non-clinical side of people's reasoning, the general common sense, the wisdom, the human-to-human stuff, the trust, the deeper stuff, the tradition stuff in people is what's winning this culture war, and they cannot account for that with any degree of clinicism.
Well, my clinical aspect of that is it's clinical in that it's mathematical and therefore based on statistical analysis. But the way people respond to things is itself not clinical whatsoever. It's pure emotion. So like it's just like, how do you feel about X, whatever, and that is true. Like, but those data are not, and I'm going back to it now. Those data are not non-factual just because there's weird stuff going on within the culture war, whatever. What my whole point in bringing all this up, though, is that people are being taken for a ride. They want the conservatives to get mad. They want the Democrats to get mad, the leftists to get mad. This is all entirely, in my opinion, constructed.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Let me change my approach because perhaps I'm misunderstanding where you're going. With respect, I maybe my mistake. Let me ask it this way. I think that whilst you are correct that our opponent may benefit in that way, it is inevitably a part of the conflict and we have to do the conflict. Okay, so are you saying that because they benefit from this kind of thing, we should simply be mindful and be careful, but keep pushing, keep fighting, we're doing the right thing? Or are you saying that our opponent can benefit from this because they're unstoppable and it's not worth us fighting in this way, or we should totally change tactic or give up? Or like, what's the positive thing of what you're saying? What are you recommending?
Well, as I said, form local communities. You need to get involved with people that you can know and trust around you. This mass level politic, I think it's falling apart. I think we're headed towards the collapse in that sense. I know everyone's been saying that. I know that people have been saying that for 100 years. So don't like trust me.
They've been saying that for all of human history. That is.
Yes, exactly. However, it never fully collapses, does it?
It's happened
but individual nations rise and.
It's happened once in the West. Say it that way. The Roman Empire.
No, individual regimes do rise and fall. It has collapsed many times.
Regimes do, but liberal societies almost never do.
I think that's a little bit egotistical, or a little bit. I'm not sure what the right word for it is. Then,
egotistical.
In this case,
Me.
No, of thinking that it's impossible for this to collapse. I think it's
not impossible. It's very unlikely.
Collapsing a little bit, though, and I think that a lot of this is distractionary. I think that's also very important. Is that they do want to distract you with, like, I believe a lot of the election stuff, and it's far more pronounced actually with the UK elections. Is that it's just, this is a farce. This is designed to distract you, to get you invested in some stuff that ultimately those in power already have, I believe, under control. And I'm not saying that because of some Illuminati shit. I think they've got too many psychologists working for them who've figured out how to mastermind how to control people into doing what they want. And like I said, this exact thing. Yes, they could. And by the way, I'm saying they're not good at it. They're not good at it. They're actually quite shit.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what they're doing. Is they're I think they do want the collapse. I think we're headed towards it.
It's possible, but I think
I don't know if I've explained that very well. I feel like I didn't, but because I feel like that was a little scatterbrained, but because it was a lot of ideas all put together.
Well, we'll have plenty of time to talk about it. I think the stuff with Trump is, I agree that distractionary media reporting is a tactic used. I completely agree. But I don't think this is it. I think this is what they would prefer to distract from, if anything. Now, again, I don't mean this specifically because, as you said, yes, the enemy can benefit from the outrage over this and their own side loving it. Yes, but overall, I think this is beneficial. But stories about Trump, stories about Trump's process towards the White House and about the MAGA movement's victories and attacks, illegitimate attacks against them, that's not the distraction. That's the events that are occurring. That's how we solve all the other problems. List any true large-scale problem in the world. We can't solve them with an illegitimate, incompetent oligarchy pretending to be democratically elected leaders of our own governments. We have to replace them. So all of it comes back to this movement, particularly, and movements like it. So this is not the distraction.
What people, and this is the really part, as a media psychologist predominantly, and I hate to start a sentence with as and, but the problem with that is right. The problem with that is that people are extremely driven by whatever they hear first and whatever the media tells them. And I know that people think that obviously people have gotten better about that, but the reality is that when I look at the data, not really. People still fall for whatever they hear first from the media, and they are driven by media headlines.
There are other factors there.
There are other factors there, absolutely.
Are there less people listening to the left today than there were 5 years ago. In which case,
according to the research, yes, the viewership has declined. But guess what goes up? What's gone up over the last week? It goes up every time Donald Trump is in the news. Viewership of CNN, viewership of MSNBC. That's why they kept him in the news for so long. That's why they love Trump so much.
That I imagine is the leftists.
He's a view breaker.
Yes. That I imagine is the leftists who already hate him going for the first time in a year to actually read the leftist journalism, because not even entirely. They read it.
Well, they don't read shit.
No, but
the point is that the viewership.
People do tend to believe, yes. In fact, it's a similar concept to in storage, MFU and MREU, most recently used, same idea. They do tend to believe in that way, yes. But they're using different sources now. Different sources are becoming their primary or their most recent source.
And a lot of attempts to destroy that.
About half the US population.
That.
No, Elon buying Twitter made things so much better. About half the population of the US, yes, about half the population of the US are more likely to see Trump's opinion on something before, or Trump's opinion, or someone that likes Trump's opinion on something before they see the mainstream press's opinion on it. And even when they do see the mainstream press, it's more likely to have context under it, which resolves the lies they're telling. And I think 10 years ago, 90% of people were more likely to see the press before the dissidents. Now it's maybe about 50%, maybe.
No.
And as that continues to change,
no. Have you? No. The data I've seen on that are it's so much more. I guess this is the problem, is that because I'm like a data goblin, I look at this stuff, and first of all, like, what is it, like 5% of people use Twitter? So even though I think that's a good thing, not even like 3% of the world population uses Twitter, or the US population, it's very low.
Yeah.
No, Twitter is actually a very small.
But that's the same argument either way, Aidan. If you're going to say that they're seeing the mainstream press first, I'm saying that the sources, wherever they were looking, Twitter or anywhere else, they're going to be seeing more of alternative sources now. And the friends they hear the news from by word of mouth, therefore, will have seen more of those sources. It doesn't really matter how many people read Twitter. The people that do are balanced more in the right direction, and so they'll be spreading it to everyone else. So it does change over time.
Okay.
The CNN and all those other news sites only exist because of Trump, pretty much, at this point.
Absolutely true. But although I disagree with the power that a lot of that has, and the reason why I disagree is because of the other really important factor here, which is cognitive dissonance and behavioral consistency, right? Is that if you have hated Donald Trump for the last 8 years because you have been told to hate Donald Trump, you will not change your opinion. No. This is not me just saying this out of random stuff. It is because the data are very consistent on the effects of cognitive dissonance.
Yep.
No one who didn't vote for Donald Trump or voted against Donald Trump in 2016 or 2020 is going to vote for him in 2024. And this is going outside of my whole part, that I think that the powers that be actually do want Trump to get elected, because again, it helps them, in my opinion. It helps them to continue to sow division, to continue to create animus and split the American population. That makes them easier to control. But if we just ignore that part, that it makes it easier to control people when they are driven by emotions rather than driven by any kind of logic, the people are not going to they're going to remember the things that they heard first. Like I said, it's called the primacy effect. They're not going to recall this other stuff, and they also are not going to be able to change their opinions, because to do so provokes cognitive dissonance, which causes psychological pain that activates the same areas of the brain as physiological pain. That's not going to happen.
So I agree with you that there is a large chunk of the population of any country who will not, let's say America for now, who will not change their mind on Trump. There is also a proportion of the population, a chunk of them, which may be bigger than that, maybe smaller than that, who could, over a long enough time and with enough new information or new experiences.
Not by the cognitive dissonance data. No.
Actually, how longitudinal were those studies?
Depends on which one, but
because if they weren't
the ones I know of off the top of my head were not longitudinal, but the reality was that it was
that's all I need to hear.
Near none.
That's all I need to hear.
Yeah.
If they weren't longitudinal, reality is. And what's more, reality has factors unpredictable to a laboratory environment, almost always unpredictable. And factors that are so profound in the changing of people's perception of the world, the perception of their own life, that yes, I think you could actually get changing of minds. Now, can you persuade someone by giving them new information? No. Can you persuade someone by making them live through the consequences of what one side says is best, and they hate it? Yes. Over enough time, I think you can change the minds of a decent chunk of the population, IQ irrelevant. And that's the chunk that is having their minds changed now.
I mean, that's...
The people are having to live through, and especially with Biden in charge. Like, unless you think that the polls are completely cooked, which I wouldn't blame you for, but they're at least consistent with themselves. In 2020, the polls between Biden and Trump were roughly equal. Now, Trump is way further ahead. Now, you can write that off as the polls being wrong, but that to me is longitudinal evidence, good enough, that yes, people's minds can be changed. Either that or
that's
people
kind
are
of
interested in taking part at all.
Yeah, it's sort of inoculation theory of thinking that, like, well, you inoculate the people against it, they won't fall for it the next time. And
it's not that direct, but it's close enough to that.
Well, there's very significant evidence for inoculation theory working. That, like, if you inoculate someone against the argument their opponent's going to make, then they won't fall for it. And in this case, it's like, no, listen to us, trust us, we're going to make the economy better.
And then it gets way worse.
Well, I just saw I've been inoculated against that horrible argument. However, here's the problem. That's been happening for 100 years, right? That, every side always makes, no, I'll make it better this time. I'll make it better that time. The reality is that people are very, very short-brained on this stuff. And that's why I bring up primacy and recency effects, because the primacy effect is people remember what they heard first. And what many people have heard first, particularly as there's now a whole new generation that's, of course, constantly entering the voting block, that's going to say the only thing that they know about Donald Trump is that he's the big, bad, evil, racist Nazi man.
I think you underestimate how much of their culture involves Trump now, because he's so mimetic and so important.
Yes.
That they probably have seen more memes lauding him.
I'm actually quite positive towards Gen Z, even, despite that what I just said.
More memes lauding him than news articles.
Not giving a shit.
Yeah, I mean it's a relic of the previous generation. It's old person shit to be like, Trump is a big nasty evil racist man. They see through it because it doesn't work in their own lives. Those ideas are the ones held by idiots, the loser of their class. Meanwhile, the people that like dank memes are the popular ones, I expect.
Yeah, I mean, I said that because those are the data.
Depending on where you are,
I am very hopeful about Gen Z, and the reason why is because and Alpha, and the reason why is because they have to live through it.
Yeah,
and that's the thing that is different, is that it is very difficult to lie to somebody's face while they have to live through a completely objectively opposite reality from what you're telling them. I think the reason why. First of all, obviously, I think that I don't know. Even if Trump gets in charge, if he does win, I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing. What I am hopeful, that's my black pill, as I've described over the last hour. My black pills.
I will agree that our enemy would have opportunities as a result. I don't agree that they are overall better off. In response to something Quattro said quickly, he said, what about all the climate cultists who constantly attempt to destroy civilization? They've learned call, indeed. Again, they're in that chunk that won't learn. There's always two sides to these conflicts, and you can't necessarily persuade people that they're wrong. As Aidan said, she's correct. But over a long enough time, some people can be persuaded by living through it, and the people who do believe something, which is hard to continue to believe even though they do, are less likely to do work in favor of those beliefs. Or some people will react by becoming more aggressive in it, but that's not all of them. And that's what happens when someone's about to lose. They either become disinterested in continuing to fight for it, or more aggressive, and it's exactly what's happening to our opponents right now. The establishment's becoming much more aggressive, and I don't think that their share, the believers that Trump was bad back 8 years ago, I expect it's now smaller than it was then. More aggressive, but smaller.
Maybe. I'll end my point on all of this just by saying that even though I do think that Trump winning is actually a boon for the left because they get to do their like or all this Trump stuff that they're doing. This actually all helps them, I think, and they think it does, at least, whether or not it does. And certainly this political persecution of him certainly helps them because, like I said, either someone goes and does a terrorisms, or it makes their base feel as if they're emboldened.
They do have opportunities, I agree.
And I know that sounds really black-pilled, but I gave you the white pill, is that the young people are tired of this shit.
Yeah.
So even if it doesn't happen now, I think the change is happening because I'm seeing it in the data. So there's my little black pill and my white pill on it.
So yes, I can agree with that, and I think there's as Sadin says, there's two options. Either we get this mostly resolved in the near future, that Trump is the catalyst that really ends the culture war in his second term, and then it's only bolstered by the generations coming up also believing in it, or either Trump doesn't get in or Trump doesn't end the culture war, and we have another period of bad shit after that, which will eventually be replaced very slowly with the new generation coming up and doing something different. I think it'll be closer to the first, but it could be as bad as the second, but I still have hope that we will eventually win this. I think Trump getting in could really do a lot of damage to our opponents, because he knows a lot more about what they are now, and I do think he genuinely wants to do damage to them. They could take the opportunity to try and solidify their own power by taking advantage of the chaos and whatnot. That is what happens in a battle, but it's what happens at the end of a battle usually, and we would be in a position to win at that point. Trump tariffing China, Trump reducing federal institutions, Trump trying to do something about election rigging, Trump just implementing good policies, stopping the border crossings, correcting, policing, all this stuff that he's talked about doing, pretty much all of his policies, will all significantly damage our opponent's power and the ways that they can exercise it. If Trump does what some state governors have done and try to close off access to the WEF, to the US particularly, that's also going to help. There's loads of things that he says he's going to do that will actually measurably help. And the only way our opponent can resist it is by either disobeying it on the state level, or by rigging someone in next time and replacing those policies and just instantly cancelling them. He can also, to continue, end all the wars in the Middle East, or at least most of them, end the US reliance on the Middle East for oil, all this stuff. All the policies he's implementing are the long-term solutions. All we need is for those solutions not to be undone, and they can end the culture war in a positive way.
I'm back.
Welcome.
Yeah, look, and
I was just summarizing.
Well, ending the wars in the Middle East is something that Trump certainly started to do.
Yeah.
And largely did, but now he's going to have to do it. And I got to ask you, who do you think Trump's going to side with in the war with Israel and Palestine?
Let's be honest. We've talked a lot about this. The main flaw, the main thing we don't like about the MAGA Republicans is the Israel lust. Yes.
Yeah, they're all Zionists.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't necessarily Zionists, but they're all pro-Israel.
But yeah, and their anti-war stance falls out the window the second you bring up Israel, our greatest ally.
It is the greatest flaw in their ideology. I agree.
Yeah, it's just I think that
Vivek isn't.
No, that's very true. So look, obviously the funneling of all of what's it now? How many billions are we up to? Last time I checked, it was like 100 billion for Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
Why are we giving so much money to Ukraine, a country we don't have any supposed investment in? It's not a part of NATO. Why are we? It's because of Biden's personal involvement with Ukraine. But then if you bring that up, if you can't prove it with a literal video of Biden saying I was paid off by Ukraine, then it's not real. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised, and if Trump goes and dumps a bunch of money into Israel as well. Just saying, expect it.
He might do. Yeah, I am by no means saying Trump is perfect, but the balance of his good policies to his very few bad policies is overwhelmingly in the good side. The Israel stuff, it will be the main sticking point. I agree. Yeah. Which is kind of why I hope he uses Vivek as his VP, because then maybe Vivek can have some influence. Vivek is even better policy-wise than Trump. But don't underestimate Trump. He's not the same man he was in 2016.